Emma had always dreamed of having a daughter, and when she finally held little Olivia in her arms, she felt like her family was truly complete. After having 3 boys, the arrival of her baby girl brought a joy she could barely put into words. It was as if Olivia filled a space in her heart that she had never even realized was there. The overwhelming sense of fulfillment made Emma notice every little thing her daughter did with fresh eyes, every tiny giggle, each new expression, and even the simple way Olivia gripped her finger felt like the best kind of surprise. She found herself becoming more attentive not only to Olivia, but to her sons as well. Somehow, the presence of the new baby inspired Emma to create an environment that overflowed with love and safety for each of her children. She wanted the house to feel like a place where every worry faded away as soon as they walked through the door. The bond between mother and daughter grew quickly, easy and natural, as though they had known each other forever. Each morning felt like a new beginning, and Emma, feeling deeply grateful, made a point of celebrating every day with her family, finding joy in even the smallest moments. Life for Emma followed a busy rhythm with the usual ups and downs that any single mother faces. There were days when she felt stretched thin, trying to manage everything on her own, from making breakfast in the early mornings, to rushing the kids off to school and juggling a job at a local shop in Chicago. The pile of laundry never seemed to shrink, and the homework questions from her boys sometimes left her more tired than she cared to admit. But through it all, Olivia's smile seemed to lift the weight right off her shoulders. On those tough days, a simple giggle from Olivia or a little hand reaching out for a hug would remind Emma why it was all worth it. As the months rolled by, Emma noticed how the bond between her and Olivia kept growing. They shared quiet moments, reading books together in the evenings, and sometimes, while the boys played outside, Olivia would curl up next to her, just happy to be close. Emma was filled with pride as she watched Olivia learn new things. Her daughter's curiosity and kindness made every bit of effort feel important. Deep down, Emma believed that no challenge could ever weaken the connection she felt with her daughter. It was something strong and unshakable, a feeling that warmed her heart no matter what life brought their way. Years went by, and just when Emma thought she had found her balance, something unexpected happened that turned her world upside down. Her relationship with James, Olivia's father, had always had its rough spots, but things got worse when there was a disagreement about Olivia's future. It started out as a simple conversation about weekend visits and school holidays, but soon grew into heated arguments about child support and where Olivia would live most of the time. Both Emma and James wanted what was best for their daughter, but when emotions ran high, it became harder for them to find any common ground. As the tension grew, lawyers got involved, and soon every little detail seemed to be questioned. One day, amidst all the paperwork and discussions, James insisted on a paternity test. For Emma, it felt like a blow. She told herself it was only a formality, nothing more than another item on the growing list of things they needed to settle. Still, deep down, it hurt that anyone could doubt the love she had for her daughter. The days waiting for the results seemed to crawl by, each one heavier than the last, holding the possibility that everything she knew could suddenly change. When the paternity test results finally arrived, everything seemed to freeze for a moment. The news hit hard. James was not Olivia's biological father. At first, Emma could not believe what she was hearing. She sat at the edge of her bed with the envelope in her hands, reading the words over and over, as if they might change. But the reality was staring right back at her. She barely had time to process the shock when her lawyer suggested running a maternity test as well, just to rule out any mistakes in the hospital records from years before. Emma agreed, mostly out of disbelief and a hope that somehow things would make sense again. The next set of results arrived a week later. This time, The outcome left Emma feeling numb. The test showed that she too was not Olivia's biological mother. For a few seconds, everything seemed to spin. She thought of all the little moments with her daughter, all the birthdays, bedtime stories, and scraped knees she had cared for. It was as though her world had shattered in an instant. The confusion and pain were overwhelming. Emma struggled to understand how this could have happened, and for the first time she felt completely lost, unsure of what her next step should be. Desperate for any clue to explain how her life had taken such a strange turn, Emma went straight to Mercy General Hospital, the place where she remembered holding Olivia for the very first time. She sat in the lobby, her hands shaking as she filled out all the paperwork required to request records from almost a decade ago. Emma met with administrators and told her story, her voice wavering as she explained how both tests had come back with results she still could not wrap her head around. Each conversation left her feeling like she was standing in quicksand, slipping further away from anything solid. The hospital staff promised to investigate, running through old files, checking security logs, and interviewing nurses who might still remember that busy time. Every time the phone rang, Emma hoped for some good news, that there had been a minor technical mistake or a label swapped by accident, but with every piece of new information, hope faded a little more. The hospital's review suggested that there had been a mix-up in the maternity ward long ago, and that two families' lives had become intertwined without anyone knowing. Emma felt powerless, completely overwhelmed by how something so important could have gone so wrong, and struggled to find any way to fix what had happened. As the hospital dug deeper, they learned that back when Emma was in the maternity ward, another young couple, Michael and Sarah Johnson, had also welcomed a baby girl. Their daughter, Abigail, had been born within hours of Olivia, and the discovery sent shockwaves through both families. The hospital called them in for a meeting. Choosing a quiet office away from the usual flow of visitors, Emma sat at the long table, her heart thudding, while Michael and Sarah came in, their faces anxious and tired. The doctors carefully explained what the records and the recent DNA tests showed. At some point in those busy newborn hours, the bracelets or paperwork must have gotten mixed up, and each family had taken home the wrong baby. The news was almost too much to take in. What should have been happy memories of those first days in the hospital suddenly felt clouded by doubt and grief. Both Emma and Sarah had spent years nurturing a daughter, watching her take first steps, listening to her first words, completely unaware of the other's existence. Now, everything was tangled, and even though nobody had meant for this to happen, the pain touched everyone. Instead of joyful family stories, there were just endless questions, a lingering sadness, and the kind of silence that filled every room they entered. Before there was even a chance to reach out and properly share the truth with Michael and Sarah, tragedy struck again. Just days after the hospital finished its investigation, news came that Michael and Sarah had been in a terrible car crash on the interstate outside Milwaukee. Both lives were lost in an instant, leaving young Abigail orphaned and with no idea about the family she had never met. The hospital called Emma with the news, and the pain that swept over her was almost too much to bear. At first, Emma just sat in silence, trying to take in the reality of what had happened. The hope that she might one day get to know her biological daughter, maybe even explain everything in her own words, was erased in a single moment. For Emma, the loss felt like it came in two waves: the heartbreak for the daughter she never had the chance to hold, and the sorrow for the parents whose stories ended far too soon. She had wanted to find some way to make things right, or at least build a relationship with Abigail. Now, that chance was gone, leaving not just questions about the past, but a deep space that nothing could fill. The weight of it settled on her each morning as she went about her day, aware of a missing piece she would never recover. Olivia grew up never knowing the truth about where she had come from. She lived her days like most kids her age, going to school, making friends, and sharing quiet dinners with Emma, who she believed was her mother. But underneath it all, there was always a feeling she could not quite explain, like a missing piece in a puzzle. Sometimes she wondered why she did not look much like Emma, or why there were no baby photos of the two of them together in the hospital. Still, she never found the words to ask, and instead let those questions stay deep inside, hoping that maybe, one day, things would make sense. Emma, on the other hand, was always there, doing her best to give Olivia a safe and loving home, even as she carried her own secret pain. She knew she could not answer every question Olivia might have, and that knowledge hurt more than she ever let on. There were nights when Emma stared at the ceiling, wishing life had turned out differently. Despite everything, the bond between them grew only stronger. Even though fate had thrown them together in the most unexpected way, their love proved that being a family was about much more than sharing the same blood. Living in a small community just outside Chicago, Emma and Olivia felt the gaze of neighbors and friends after the story quietly made its way around town. People sometimes whispered in the grocery store, and there were awkward questions at church or school events. Some folks wondered out loud whether Olivia should search for her real family, or if there was a better home for Abigail after what had happened. Even though no one ever truly understood what they were going through, the talk only made everything harder for both Emma and Olivia. They tried to ignore the pointed looks and steer clear of gossip, but it was almost impossible not to feel the weight of everyone's curiosity pressing down on them. As Olivia reached adulthood, these questions stuck with her. She found herself thinking often about Abigail, who had lost her parents before she ever had a chance to know her real mom. Olivia wondered what her life would have been like if things were different, if she had grown up with Michael and Sarah, or if the hospital mix-up had never happened. The empathy she felt for Abigail ran deep, a kind of understanding that did not need any words. Olivia knew there would always be things she could not get back, but she was determined to live a life full of kindness and hope for both of them. Emma had always believed that honesty was the best way to build a strong relationship with Olivia. From the time Olivia was old enough to understand, Emma shared the story of how she had come into her life. There were no secrets or sugar-coated versions, just the truth, told gently, in ways a child could grasp. Emma explained that she had not carried Olivia in her belly or been there for her first moments, but that none of that mattered when it came to the love she felt. She would often say, "You were born in my heart," and after a while, those words became a sort of promise between them. Whenever Olivia had doubts about where she belonged or felt lost in the maze of what might have been, Emma reminded her of their special connection. They had made a family out of the little moments, comfort after a bad day, home-cooked dinners, laughter on rainy afternoons, proving that love was an everyday choice. No matter what anyone else said or thought, they held on to the idea that family was not about blood or paperwork, but about showing up, caring, and growing together. For both of them, this honest love was more than enough to call each other family. After Michael and Sarah died, Emma found herself faced with a decision that kept her up night after night. She knew Abigail was her biological daughter. Even if she had never had the chance to raise her, Emma decided she had to try to bring Abigail into her life, so she started the complicated legal process to gain custody. But nothing about it was simple. Abigail's grandparents, Sarah's parents, wanted to keep their granddaughter close. They loved her and did not understand why someone who had never really known Abigail felt entitled to take her away. What should have been a time to come together turned into strong disagreements and tense court hearings. The custody battle stretched on far longer than anyone expected. Each court date brought new arguments and more paperwork. While the lawyers debated what would really be best for Abigail, Emma pushed on, motivated by the hope that eventually she would have both her daughters together. But every setback made the goal feel further out of reach, and she wondered if the court would ever rule in her favor. The strain wore on everyone, including Olivia, who watched her mom struggle and could only wish for a peaceful end. The hope of reuniting with Abigail flickered, but never faded entirely. After a string of hearings that went on for nearly 3 years, the judge finally gave a ruling. With both families gathered in the old courthouse in downtown Chicago, the decision was delivered in calm, clear words. Abigail would remain with her grandparents, and Olivia would stay with Emma. The court explained that the girls grew up with the families who had raised them. These were the bonds that had shaped their lives from the beginning. Pulling them away from those connections, the judge said, would only risk causing more pain. It was a choice meant to protect the love and security the girls already knew, even if it also left some dreams unfinished. As Emma walked out of the courthouse, she felt 2 strong emotions at once. Relief washed over her, knowing Olivia would stay by her side and their life together would continue. Yet there was a sadness too, a real sense of loss for the daughter she would never truly get to know. She thought of all the what-ifs, the possible laughter and shared stories with Abigail that now would never come to be, both sweet and heavy. This outcome showed Emma that sometimes loving someone means accepting what you cannot change and finding peace in what you still have. The feeling that things had been unfair never quite left Emma. After the court's decision, she was filled with a deep ache over the separation from Abigail that only grew as time passed. Even though she still had Olivia by her side, she could not ignore the sense that the hospital's mistake had stolen something precious from them all. Emma knew she had to stand up for herself, and for the lives changed by that single error, so she filed a lawsuit against the hospital where the mix-up first happened, Northwestern Memorial in Chicago. The case took a long time and dragged everyone back through old memories and paperwork. As the lawyers started digging, it became clear just how many steps had gone wrong that night, years before. The hospital had skipped double checks and ignored key procedures, and those failures had quietly shaped the paths of Emma, Olivia, Abigail, and everyone around them. Eventually, Northwestern Memorial agreed to a large settlement, a number that reporters said was one of the biggest in the city that year. But when Emma finally got that check, it only brought a dull, empty feeling. No amount of money could return the lost years or make up for family moments she would never get back. News about Emma's case spread far and wide, reaching homes and hospitals all over the United States. Evening talk shows and daily papers picked up the story, turning what had happened at Northwestern Memorial into a topic of national concern. People everywhere started talking about the risks that come from the smallest mistakes, especially when it comes to something as important as a newborn baby. The fear of another family going through the same heartbreak was real, and that shared concern pushed hospitals to take a hard look at their own practices. Soon, hospital administrators from New York to Los Angeles were updating how they identified newborns. Simple wristbands were now paired with fingerprint checks, and nurses were trained to double and triple check every baby before sending them home. Lawmakers even debated new regulations so that every hospital in the country would follow these tougher rules. For doctors and nurses, the message was clear. One moment of carelessness could split a family apart forever. As healthcare professionals adjusted the way they worked, they thought about Emma and the pain she had lived through. Her struggle was not just something in the news. It became a reminder that behind every hospital room and legal case was a family hoping for safety and trust. Even as hospitals across the United States tightened their newborn security and lawmakers gave speeches about safer families, the real weight of what happened settled quietly at home with Emma and Olivia. No grand change in policy could fill the empty spot that Emma felt inside. She often found herself lost in thoughts of what might have been. Sometimes, late at night, while she washed dishes or folded laundry, anger would wash over her. Anger at a system that had let this happen, at the hospital, and even a little at fate for giving Olivia a life so different from what she deserved. It pained Emma deeply to know that Olivia would never meet her biological parents, and that long months in court had left both their own and Abigail's family on uneasy terms, scars running deep yet mostly unspoken. But Olivia, now older and more aware, found her own comfort in the only way she knew. She leaned on Emma, never questioning whether love was real or earned. Emma was, for as long as she could remember, simply Mom. Whenever old wounds started to ache, the two of them came together, whether over shared pizza on the living room floor or during quiet walks by the lake in Lincoln Park. Their closeness was their way of keeping the world's noise out. Day by day, it was this small, steady care that helped heal the most stubborn parts of their hearts. As the years went by, both Emma and Olivia grew in ways neither could have expected. Olivia, once just a little girl holding tight to Emma's hand, started to see her mom through a new lens. She realized Emma had done so much more than provide a home. She listened, gave advice, and most importantly, always showed up, no matter what. Gradually, their conversations shifted from mom and daughter talks to deep, thoughtful exchanges between best friends. Laughter over spilled coffee, quiet car rides through the streets of Chicago, and long evenings sharing stories all stitched them together even more tightly. Through everything, the challenges and pain of their past were never fully forgotten. But together they learned not to let old losses take over their lives. Instead, they built new routines, celebrated simple moments, and made space for honest talks about what they had been through. Friends and family noticed how strong and close they were, often saying they seemed unbeatable as a team. Even neighbors, who remembered the darker days of reporters and legal battles, found hope in seeing Emma and Olivia move forward, side by side. Their story showed that sometimes the love you choose every day can be even more powerful than the one written by blood. One evening, after another long talk with Emma about everything they had been through, Olivia realized her story could matter to others. The idea of writing a book slowly took shape in her mind. She wanted to share not just the pain of finding out she had a different biological family, but also the hope and strength she had discovered with Emma. Olivia thought maybe if she told the whole journey, the court battles, the heartbreak, and above all, the love that built her sense of self, she could help other people who felt lost or torn apart by forces out of their control. With Emma's encouragement, Olivia started making notes about her memories. She wrote about small things, like how Emma made pancakes on Saturdays, or the sound of Chicago buses at night, and also big moments, like when the judge read the decision that would shape their lives. Writing felt challenging at first. Olivia worried about saying too much or not enough, but she kept going because she wanted readers to see how families come together in all sorts of ways. Her hope was that by sharing so honestly, she could bring comfort or even courage to others, showing them that love and belonging mean more than blood alone ever could. The effects of what happened at Northwestern Memorial did not just fade away with the news cycle or the end of court hearings. For years after, families touched by the hospital's mistake carried the weight of what if in their day-to-day lives. Emma sometimes caught herself wondering about Abigail, imagining the life her daughter might have had if things had gone right from the start. And while Olivia found peace in her bond with Emma, she too sometimes felt a quiet ache when she thought about her biological roots and the family she'd never know. Abigail's family, on the other hand, faced the same kinds of questions and memories, each person wrestling with the past in their own way. Even though time marched on, the pain did not just disappear, it became something people learned to live with, a part of family gatherings, random conversations, or silent moments. There was never any simple answer or single moment of closure. Over the years, some reached out for therapy, while others kept everything bottled up, just trying to move forward the best they could. What united everyone was a kind of shared loss, a missing piece that everyone could feel but no one could quite replace. Yet, in their own ways, Each person kept searching for a bit of hope and a fresh start. Over time, Emma and Olivia's journey became more than just a private story. They found themselves considered symbols of resilience and the kind of love that does not break, even under the hardest pressure. Neighbors and even strangers who heard about their experiences saw something hopeful in the way the two of them chose to respond to everything that had happened. Instead of letting anger or sadness define them, Emma and Olivia worked to build a real connection based on trust, honest talks, and a simple daily respect. That choice, day in and day out, helped heal wounds that once had seemed impossible to fix. Their story quietly spread throughout the Chicago community and even beyond. Families dealing with their own challenges started to talk differently about what being together really means. Some parents thought more carefully about how to support their kids, even when things were not perfect. Others, who had adopted or faced unexpected changes, looked to Emma and Olivia's example for hope that closeness was always possible, no matter how a family began. Slowly, the wider conversation around motherhood and belonging shifted. People started to see that family was not just about blood or paperwork. It was about showing up, caring, and making room for love, even after mistakes. In the end, Emma and Olivia came to see that what truly mattered was what they created together in their daily lives. Their sense of family was not decided by birth certificates or courtroom decisions, but by the little things: quiet talks after a long day, sharing laughs over a pile of laundry, and the warmth in simple hugs before heading out the door. Every time one reached out to comfort the other or celebrated something small, it built a foundation that felt strong and lasting. The harder days did not entirely fade, but they were balanced out by these small moments of care and understanding. What Emma and Olivia learned, and what they hoped others would see, was that the past did not get to shape every part of their story. They took control of their own future, deciding together what kind of family they wanted to be. The power in their bond was not in making everything perfect, but in choosing love over and over, especially when life proved tough or uncertain. That commitment became their legacy, demonstrating to those around them that real love, when it is honest and freely given, can rise above almost anything and help even the deepest wounds slowly heal.